I collapsed at work and was swiftly taken to the hospital in an ambulance. The tests revealed a serious illness requiring emergency surgery immediately. Feeling anxious, I called my husband. I'm about to undergo surgery. I think I'll be hospitalized for about a week to monitor my progress, I told him, expecting reassurance and support. A week, huh? Well, you'll be safe in the hospital. This is a good opportunity for you to take a break, he responded, his tone tinged with something that made me uneasy. Suspicion gnawed at me. After the surgery, during my recovery in the hospital, I decided to check his credit card statements. What I discovered shocked me. He had taken advantage of my hospitalization to travel abroad with his mistress. I was furious. Determined to confront him, I focused on my recovery with remarkable speed. I couldn't wait to see the look on his face when he returned from his trip. My name is Nancy, and Tom and I have been married for a decade. Lately, our relationship had grown indifferent, as if we were merely coexisting. With no children, we both worked hard, and money was never a concern. I had believed we would peacefully retire together. However, Tom had been acting strangely for a while now. He suddenly cared about his appearance and started dressing in expensive clothes and visiting trendy salons. Where have you been getting your hair done lately? I asked one day, noticing the change. It's none of your business, he snapped back defensively. His late nights at work or on supposed business trips had become more frequent. I hadn't paid much attention until I noticed the scent of perfume on him when he returned home late. This suit smells like perfume, I remarked one evening, catching him off guard. Oh, there was a woman next to me on the subway, he stammered, his excuse unconvincing. His behavior painted a clear picture of infidelity, and I was ready to confront him as soon as I was able. When I checked our bank account, I noticed our savings had been rapidly dwindling over the past few years. It was clear to me he was likely spending it on his mistress. Questions flooded my mind. Who was she? How could I uncover the truth? And if he was indeed cheating, what should I do? As I grappled with these thoughts alone, my appetite waned, and I sank into a deepening depression. Then one day at work, it all became too much. Nancy, are you all right? My colleague's voice seemed distant as I began to lose consciousness. The next time I opened my eyes, I found myself in a hospital bed. The doctor explained that stress, likely exacerbated by Tom, had caused my collapse. Further tests were recommended, and I reluctantly agreed to stay overnight. Unprepared for an extended hospital stay, I called Tom immediately. Hello, Tom. I collapsed at work and was taken to the hospital by ambulance. An ambulance? Are you in the hospital now? Yes, they want me to stay overnight for tests. It's probably just stress, I replied, avoiding the real reason. Tom sounded relieved. What? You scared me there. So you're not coming home tonight? No, the test results will come out tomorrow. All right, I got it. The hospital will take care of everything you need, right? I don't need to come, do I? Hurt by his lack of concern, I insisted. I want you here to hear the results with me tomorrow. Do you really need me there? I won't understand what they say, Tom hesitated. I don't want to hear the results alone, I exclaimed firmly. Reluctantly, Tom agreed to accompany me to the hospital the next day. When we heard the test results together, it was like a blow to the gut. The tests show signs of a stroke. We need to perform surgery immediately, the doctor informed us gravely. When I glanced at Tom beside me, he appeared just as shocked by the news. After a moment's contemplation, he turned to the doctor with a question. So, that means she can't come home today, right? That's correct. We'd like her to stay in the hospital today, and we'll schedule the surgery for either tomorrow or the day after, the doctor replied calmly. As for discharge, it will depend on her recovery post-surgery, but likely around a week. A week, I see. Okay, Tom nodded, absorbing the information. Leaving the consultation room with a heavy atmosphere hanging between us, Tom muttered, I'll make a quick phone call, and walked off. I overheard him speaking to someone in hushed tones. She won't be around for a week. This might be our chance, he said before returning to me. As he hastily prepared to leave, I tried to stop him. Wait, hold on. Aren't we going to discuss? We've heard everything from the doctor. We just have to trust the hospital now. It seems like a good place, so don't worry. You should rest. Good luck with the surgery, he interrupted with forced cheerfulness, then swiftly departed. I called after him about the surgery time, but he didn't respond. From then on, Tom never showed up at the hospital. Despite a successful surgery, days went by without a word from him. Calls to our house phone went unanswered, and his cell phone remained out of reach. The memory of that phone call now filled me with a sinking feeling. I logged into Tom's online credit card statement, and what I found was staggering. There were records of 2 airplane tickets to Hawaii, among other expenses, all while I anxiously remained alone in the hospital. Tom was evidently enjoying a lavish trip abroad with his mistress, but that wasn't all. The statement revealed tens of thousands spent on designer brands and dining at upscale restaurants, a level of expenditure I had never imagined. Digging deeper, I traced their accommodations and found her social media profile. It was filled with photos of her and Tom on romantic dates. She seemed certain they wouldn't be discovered. Confronted with overwhelming evidence, my anger towards Tom boiled over. Forgiveness was out of the question. I was determined to retaliate. As I lay in my hospital bed post-surgery, thoughts of revenge consumed me. Eventually, a plan formed, and with it, a newfound surge of energy unlike anything I had felt before. Before the surgery, anxiety had nearly crushed me. Now, my anger had transformed into a driving force. My sole focus was on recovering quickly to execute my revenge. Even the doctor who monitored my progress post-surgery was astonished. This recovery is remarkable. It's rare to see someone bounce back so swiftly, they remarked, with a faint smile. I have something urgent to attend to, so I'd like to be discharged as soon as possible. I informed the hospital staff, determined to accelerate my recovery. Miraculously, my progress exceeded expectations, and I was discharged earlier than planned. I chose not to inform my husband of the change in discharge date. There was no point. His phone would likely go unanswered anyway. Besides, I had no time to waste. I needed to prepare meticulously for my revenge. The first time Tom contacted me on my cell phone was on the original day I was supposed to leave the hospital. "Nancy, I just went to the hospital, and they said you've already been discharged." Yes, my recovery was faster than expected, so they let me go early. You could have let me know. It seems like my phone was off. My bad. Okay, I'll head home now. An hour later, Tom called again, clearly agitated. "Hey Nancy, what the hell is going on?" "What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb. Our house is gone." "Oh, you've noticed. I don't need it anymore, so I've cleared the land and put it up for sale. It's in a great location, so it should sell quickly." "What the hell are you talking about? You can't just sell our house. It's marital property." I didn't expect to hear marital property from you. What about the money in our joint bank account? That's marital property too. I've known for a while now that you've been spending it recklessly." "Well, there are various circumstances related to my work." "Related to work, huh? So going on an overseas trip with your mistress is also part of your job?" "How? How did you find out about that?" "You've been careless, haven't you? I can check the credit card statements too. You know, I know about the plane tickets, the accommodations, the restaurants, and all the luxury items for women." Tom was left speechless, realizing I was fully aware of his actions. "I know exactly how much you've spent on your mistress," I said loudly. Tom fell silent. "You're the one who misused our marital property, so I'll be using the money from the house sale to cover what you've given to your mistress and as compensation." "Compensation? But what about our living situation after selling the house?" Tom stammered. "Don't tell me you expect us to keep living together. There's no way. I'm not staying married to a man who takes romantic trips while his wife is in the hospital." "Divorce? Wait, it was just a fling. I never wanted to divorce you." "If it was just a fling, why spend over $10,000? I want nothing to do with such foolishness. You chose a trip with your mistress over being by your wife's side during emergency surgery. To me, that says more than just a fling." "I can't live like this anymore," I continued, my voice firm. "You're not my precious husband anymore. I don't believe a word you say. I don't want to see your face again. I'll be moving into a new home and living freely. You can do whatever you want, even be with your mistress." "Are you serious?" Tom exclaimed. "You'll regret this," he added desperately. "What I regret is the 10 years I wasted with you," I retorted. "You've forgotten all I've done for you in those 10 years. Don't joke about providing for me," I continued with finality. "The money you wasted included our savings." Tom remained silent, realizing there was nothing more to say. "You spent all the money I earned from working, didn't you? Don't act all righteous now. Don't you have any sentimentality? Is this how you treat a husband you've been with for years?" Tom retorted. "That's rich coming from you. I'm just throwing your own words back at you," I shot back. As a kindness, I've put your stuff at the dump. If you don't hurry, the garbage collectors will take it. That's a lie, right? Damn it, don't screw with me. I'm done with you. Tom snapped and hung up abruptly. He was probably rushing to the dump at that very moment. When I disposed of the larger items, I placed the divorce papers on top, hoping he would notice them soon. After everything I had said, surely he would agree to our divorce. I was preparing to start anew, hoping never to hear from him again. But within a month, Tom called me again. What now? I have nothing more to discuss with you, I said, attempting to hang up. However, Tom's voice came through, shouting urgently. Wait, don't hang up. We haven't filed for divorce yet. I'm still your husband. Please listen to me. His unexpected plea left me with no choice but to hear him out. What do you mean we haven't filed for divorce yet? I asked, perplexed. After our conversation, I decided to live with her a bit longer. I wanted to observe before rushing into a divorce and remarriage. It felt like the right decision. Besides, she spends money like water and even talks about marriage. I listened silently, unsure how to respond to this sudden change in Tom's stance. I want to be a homemaker, but even with a ton of savings, it won't be enough if I marry her. I knew that even before you two started living together. I'm surprised you didn't notice her spending habits after showering her with gifts, I replied, incredulous. Tom, sounding oddly impressed, said, I see, Nancy. You're solid. From what you just said, I'm certain you're the only one who can be my wife. Excuse me, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Nancy, let's start over. You've been sick. It must be scary to be alone, right? Was this guy an idiot? He wouldn't understand unless I spelled it out for him. I took a deep breath and raised my voice. Scary? How dare you say that? The most scared I've ever been was when I was alone in the hospital on the day of my surgery. Even when I was trembling with fear before the surgery, even when I was enduring the pain afterward, you weren't there for me. I'm really sorry about that. I wasn't thinking straight. It's not just that time, is it? After all this cheating on me. How can you say that? A lot has happened, but I can't do without you. You feel the same way, don't you? That's why you've been with me for 10 years, isn't it? Stop talking nonsense. I'm certain that I can't continue with you after what happened, I said firmly. I can't even imagine spending my life with someone I can't trust. So you don't want to give it another try? No, not at all. What about my feelings? My affection for you disappeared a long time ago. I still had feelings for you as a family member and thought we could spend the rest of our lives appreciating each other. But you trampled on those feelings. Tom fell silent. I left him with these final words. But I do have one thing to thank you for. Finding out you were cheating made me so angry that I felt like I couldn't afford to be sick. I decided to level the house and sell it before you returned from your affair. What the hell is that? Thanks to you, I recovered surprisingly fast. Even the hospital doctors were shocked. It seems my anger towards you became my motivation to keep going. So, thanks for that. Nancy, think this is over? No. Go to hell with your mistress. Goodbye. Without waiting for his reply, I hung up the phone and immediately contacted my lawyer. I couldn't stand postponing the divorce any longer. I had saved all the evidence of his infidelity, ready to submit to my lawyer. I was confident the divorce proceedings and the demand for compensation for emotional distress would go smoothly. By leaving everything to my lawyer, I wouldn't need to contact Tom anymore. To ensure he couldn't call me, I even changed my cell phone number. I doubted he would dare come to my workplace, but I had informed my colleagues about the situation just in case. Since Tom's bad reputation was already well known in the office, I believed they would alert me immediately if they saw him and help avoid any direct encounters. Everything proceeded exactly as I had planned. Tom, after hearing from the lawyer, obediently agreed to the divorce and accepted the demand for emotional distress compensation. As for his mistress, she apparently resigned herself to paying the compensation since she couldn't deny the affair. It seems she was ready to remarry Tom once our divorce was finalized, insisting on paying her part of the compensation from Tom's savings, treating it as if it belonged to both of them. At this rate, his savings would be drained in no time. He and his mistress seemed set to continue their irresponsible relationship, and I could see that Tom was headed for a tough time. Yet, I had no sympathy for him. He brought this on himself by cheating with a money-grabbing woman. On the other hand, I managed to rent an apartment of the same size as before using the money from selling our house and the compensation from the divorce. The fruitless 10 years I spent with Tom wouldn't come back, but now I could live my life without being controlled by him. If I ever remarried, it would be with someone who values trust. I made up my mind to follow that principle. Pardon me, but it appears my car is experiencing some issues. We advise you to settle your remaining balance promptly. Failure to do so will result in your card remaining inactive. What? The customer service representative from the card company did mention an outstanding balance. It seems the payment for my usual credit card hasn't been processed yet. But why? Should have a significant amount saved in the account designated for automatic payments. However, upon checking my bank balance, it shows $0. The only other individual with access to withdraw funds from it would be my husband. With a sense of urgency, I reached for my mobile phone and swiftly reported to the police. I'm Garnett Felton, 30 years old, and I operate as a freelance web designer, setting my own tempo. Thanks to the flexibility of my job, I frequently meet clients face-to-face despite the option of virtual meetings. Though virtual interactions are feasible, I find that direct communication better conveys my concepts. As deadlines loom, I immerse myself in work, sacrificing sleep for productivity. My ability to sustain this pace is largely due to the unwavering support of my husband Thomas, whom I married just a year ago. A couple of years ago, when I was tasked with a project at a company, he was the liaison I dealt with. We dated for a year and a half before tying the knot. Following our wedding, he relocated to my apartment. However, a significant issue has emerged in my life revolving around Thomas's parents. They have a lax approach to finances and often find themselves strapped for cash. Thomas and I divide our living costs evenly. Given my higher income, I typically cover all expenses for the month, with him reimbursing me half at the start of the subsequent month. However, when I mentioned this month's expenses to Thomas as usual, he seemed annoyed and remarked, "Look, money's a bit tight right now. Can I settle my share of the living expenses after my next paycheck?" What do you mean by tight? I'm only asking for half of the living expenses. Yeah, I get that, but I'm completely strapped until my next payday. What do you mean? It's only been 10 days since you got paid. His evasiveness and reluctance to clarify started to irk me. His deliberate ambiguity prompted me to delve deeper. Hey, can you please explain why you can't pay properly? And what's this about assisting your parents? Well, you see, is there something you're suspicious about? No, not at all. I simply assisted my mom and dad. Assisted? Yeah, they mentioned they were facing some difficulties, so I sent them some money. Thomas's parents were supposed to be financially stable. My father-in-law held a full-time job, while my mother-in-law worked part-time. So, why did they suddenly require financial assistance? This question had been nagging at me, and I couldn't shake it. Why do your parents need financial support if they're both employed? This hasn't been necessary in the past. I've been assisting them for a while now. They recently requested an increase in the amount, starting this month. You didn't actually agree to increase the amount, did you? Yes, I did. Though the issue of helping one's parents in need is understandable, I couldn't help but feel unsettled by this revelation. All right, just ensure you settle your share when you receive your paycheck at the end of the month. Agreed. My husband has a stubborn streak that's hard to break once he's made up his mind. While I adore him, his trait does lead to some challenges. I knew trying to reason further wouldn't sway him, and apologies weren't exactly his forte. So I opted to refrain from pushing the issue and waited patiently till the next payday. Since that incident, he's been consistently finding excuses to avoid contributing to our household expenses. And when he does chip in, it's only a fraction of what's needed. It's been nearly 6 months of him refusing to pull his weight. While we're technically still married, my patience is wearing thin. Not only am I covering all the bills, but I'm also responsible for all the household chores. Reflecting on this situation left me feeling foolish and overwhelmed with a sense of emptiness. One late night, he stumbled in, his cheeks flushed from alcohol. Unable to contain my frustration, I raised my voice. "Why did you call if you were going to be out drinking? I made dinner and waited for you." Sorry. A colleague unexpectedly invited me out. But couldn't you have sent a message? I've asked you before to keep me informed. It's not fair to leave me hanging. Don't start yelling the moment I walk in. It's not welcoming. What do you mean? Why am I the one being blamed? He shot me a look of disdain as if I were in the wrong. His attitude infuriated me, and I confronted him. How can you afford to go drinking when you can't even contribute to our bills? I can enjoy a drink occasionally. I'm exhausted from working every day. So am I. I handle all the household chores. If you can't contribute anymore, can't we stop sending money to your parents? What? Why? That's my family's business. It's not your concern. And what about us, Thomas? Aren't we family too? What am I to you, living here with you after we got married? This is so irritating. What does it matter? You earn more than I do anyway. Why does he feel so entitled? The only reason Thomas can live comfortably is because I'm shouldering all the expenses. Would a simple thank you or sorry for the inconvenience be too much to ask? I was left speechless by his irrational arguments. I couldn't fathom his arrogance. Given our escalating tempers, I realized a rational conversation was unlikely and suggested, let's revisit this tomorrow. The following day, while preparing dinner and awaiting his return, I heard the front door creak open. Welcome home, I called out, but received no response. Then the living room door swung open, and in walked my husband with his parents. Mom, Dad, what brings you here? With a smug grin, my husband interjected, my parents have something they want to discuss with you. To discuss with me? Come on, Mom and Dad, let's get to the point. Prompted by my husband, my father-in-law began to look apologetic. Apologies for the sudden visit. We've come to talk about the financial support Thomas has been providing us. What's this about? Oh, Ernest, could you please ease up on Thomas? Surprised, I blurted out, what? I was completely bewildered. Then my mother-in-law, who had remained silent, spoke up. Garnett, Thomas has been sending us money each month, thinking of our well-being. It's unfair for you to accuse him. What are you saying? Accusations. All I'm asking for is our living expenses to be managed properly. Listen, Garnett, I hate to bring this up, but we're practically family, aren't we? If your own family were struggling, wouldn't you lend a hand? What? That's what anyone would expect, right? Your father-in-law and I have been experiencing financial strain lately, so we rely on Thomas to continue supporting us. Therefore, you should handle all the living expenses for both of you. It seemed they assumed it was only natural for me to shoulder all the costs. Unable to tolerate it any longer, I lashed out. Enough is enough. What do you think I've been doing? Managing all the household chores and covering every living expense. How is that fair? Isn't it what married couples do? Support each other, right? Or are you just that selfish? Upon hearing his mother's taunt, my husband, sitting beside me, couldn't suppress a chuckle. That evening, despite my efforts to reason, they remained obstinate. They finally departed well past 9 p.m. Once they were gone, my husband abruptly handed me signed divorce papers. In disbelief, I questioned, "What's this?" "It means exactly what it says," he retorted. Peering down at me, he declared, "If you persist in defying me, I'll end our marriage." "Are you serious?" "Absolutely. If you don't want a divorce, then simply obey. Your role is to follow, not lead." I knew I should have stood my ground, but I felt utterly drained. Perhaps trying to reason with Thomas before the situation worsened was futile. Perhaps divorce was the only option. The decision was swift. The following day, I signed the divorce papers Thomas had given me and headed to City Hall. The documents were processed, and just like that, I was single once more. Now that I'm finally liberated, I'll soon find my own place and embrace independent living. Feeling rejuvenated, I opted to indulge myself with a shopping trip to the department store. Working predominantly from home with outings limited to client meetings, it had been quite some time since I splurged on myself, especially given the recent strain of covering all expenses. Today, however, I've decided to treat myself. With that resolve, I ventured into the women's clothing section. After trying on a couple of dresses, I settled on 2 favorites. At the checkout, as I handed over my credit card, the cashier's troubled expression caught my attention. I'm sorry, ma'am. It seems we're unable to process this card." "What? That's impossible. I've used it recently to purchase a new tablet for work without any issues. Why the sudden problem now?" Racing home, I dialed the card company's number. Upon explaining the situation to the operator, she delivered startling news. "We require immediate payment of the outstanding balance, or your card will be rendered unusable." Outstanding balance. Indeed, last month, we were unable to debit your card usage from your account. Is this plausible? Please verify your bank account balance. After ending the call, I swiftly accessed my bank account online, the very account from which my card draws funds. Initially reserved for personal savings, it now solely serves my card transactions. If memory serves, there should be $5 million within, but the balance reads zero. Just before the card's due date, the entire $5 million had been withdrawn. What on earth was happening? A chilling suspicion gripped me. Could it have been Thomas? But who else had access? Our bank book and ATM card were stored together, only accessible to the both of us, meaning Thomas was the only other person who could have withdrawn from my account. I waited for his return, then confronted him. "Hey, did you withdraw money from my account?" He smirked, let out an exasperated sigh, and replied, clearly irritated. "Oh, you figured it out. Thought I did a pretty good job of covering my tracks, huh? I can't believe this. Why would you do that?" "Why? For my parents, of course. I gave them your $5 million. What did you just say?" "Just as I said, they needed financial support. Fortunately, I have the means to provide it." Speechless, he began to explain, his tone tinged with pride. It appeared his parents had developed an obsession with online shopping. They were purchasing items they fancied, far exceeding their income. Initially, they turned to Thomas for assistance. However, as their spending spiraled out of control, they began to demand more. They started purchasing multiples of the same items, gifting them to neighbors. Before they knew it, their monthly expenses surpassed $500,000, a sum Thomas couldn't manage alone. So, he withdrew the $5 million from my account. After he finished explaining, he remarked, "You shouldn't complain. They're your family too. Consider it looking after them. Don't make a fuss over a mere $5 million. In that moment, I found myself dialing the police on my cell. "Hello, police. I want to report a break-in and theft. My address is..." Thomas watched me with wide eyes as I ended the call. He shouted, "Hey, what are you doing? Did you just call the police?" "Police? Why wouldn't I? There's been a break-in and theft, right?" "Calling it theft is exaggerating. This is my house," I firmly reminded a flustered Thomas. "We're no longer a couple. In fact, I'm the one renting this place, so technically, it's not your home, is it? We're not together anymore, remember? The divorce papers you signed yesterday, I'd already submitted them. So in other words, this is my place and you're just a stranger here, an intruder, right? You've got to be kidding me. Call them back and cancel the report." Waving my phone angrily at him, I warned, "If you lay a finger on me, I'll call the cops again. Just so you know, they're already on their way. You can't escape now. Why don't you just admit what you've done?" "Whoa, hold on. We loved each other, didn't we? How did it come to this?" "Love each other?" I scoffed. "Don't try to feed me that nonsense. Whose fault do you think all of this is? It all began because you blindly supported your irresponsible parents. You can't just act recklessly and expect forgiveness. Who would forgive someone as despicable as you? What a fool." "Fool? Do you even know who you're talking to?" "I'm talking to you. Like parents, like child. Because you were raised by parents who were careless with money, you think it's acceptable to deplete someone else's savings. I hope the police give you a stern lecture and you feel the weight of those $5 million. Just then, the police arrived and Thomas crumbled on the spot. "Who's the suspect?" Pointing at my husband, now cowering on the floor, I said, "It's him, without a doubt." "All right, let's go. You'll need to come in for questioning," the officer commanded. All I wanted was to support my parents, but my pleas fell on deaf ears, and Thomas was escorted away by the police. However, the authorities deemed the incident a civil matter, explaining they couldn't intervene. Determined to seek justice, I sought legal assistance and demanded compensation for the misappropriation of my $5 million in savings, along with damages totaling $6 million. Naturally, Thomas and his parents couldn't afford such a sum. In the end, all three found themselves drowning in debt. Despite their financial woes, his parents continued their reckless spending habits, accruing even more debt. They eventually resorted to borrowing from loan sharks, living in constant fear of relentless debt collectors, desperately trying to remain unseen. On the contrary, I made the bold decision to sever all ties with Thomas and relocated to a new apartment. Fortunately, my career began to thrive, and my income surpassed my wildest expectations. Since parting ways with Thomas, everything in my professional life fell into place. In hindsight, I regret not divorcing him sooner. Despite the failure of my marriage, I recognized that my life was far from over. Taking lessons from this experience, I resolved to exercise greater caution in my future endeavors. Today marks a significant decision in my life. I have chosen to care for Amy and Yuri. Upon my husband's return, he brought along his sister and her child. He determined that we would share our home and provide support for them. I couldn't fathom how he could prioritize his sister and niece over our own daughter and me. It became unbearable. How could he neglect his responsibilities as a husband and father? I've reached my limit. I'll end this marriage myself. Thus begins my tale of retribution against my detestable, sister-fixated husband. My name is Amelia, and I've been wedded to Ethan for 5 years. Together, we have a precious 4-year-old daughter named Luna. Our daughter, born shortly after our marriage, is simply enchanting. She's the center of our universe. My husband and daughter, they're my cherished family. However, it appears my husband doesn't share the same sentiment. One evening, as I waited for my husband's return, Luna and I busied ourselves in the kitchen preparing curry. "Mommy, when will Daddy be home?" Luna inquired. And Daddy seems to be running late today. I wonder what's keeping him," I replied. It was unusual for my husband, who typically arrived straight home from work, to be absent even past 7:30 p.m. Still no response to my calls or messages. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Luna reminded me. "All right, sweetheart, let's go ahead and eat without Daddy tonight," I replied, trying to mask my disappointment. After finishing dinner with Luna and tidying up, my husband finally walked through the door. "Welcome back." "Wait, what?" I exclaimed in confusion. Standing beside Ethan were his sister Amy and her daughter, Yuri. They were burdened with an unusual amount of luggage. "Ethan, what's going on?" I stammered, struggling to comprehend the scene before me. He then dropped the bombshell. "From today onwards, we're taking care of Amy and Yuri." "What? Take care of them?" I'm lost. Why didn't he mention anything before bringing them home? This whole situation is beyond me, I struggled to articulate. "Support them." Why the suddenness? "I haven't heard a word about this," I added, feeling bewildered. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision. What choice did I have? Amy had a fallout with her husband, so she reached out to me, Ethan explained casually. "And for how long are we supposed to support them? We barely have enough space in our apartment," I pointed out, hoping he'd recognize the inconvenience. But my husband seemed unfazed. "Can't you let them use your room?" he suggested, as if it were the most obvious solution. "My room?" I echoed, incredulous. "You can move into Luna's room. Then we'll have a spare room for Amy and Yuri," my husband suggested, as if it were the simplest solution. I was speechless. Did he expect me to accept this without protest? Why should I tolerate all of this when we're the ones providing for them? It made no sense to me. With a forced smile, my husband ushered his sister and niece inside, saying, "Make yourselves at home from now on." Without a hint of apology for the abrupt intrusion, they made themselves comfortable on the couch, engrossed in the TV. I pulled my husband aside, whispering urgently, "Have you lost your mind? Taking in Amy and Yuri out of nowhere, and our budget is already tight." My husband let out a frustrated sigh, his expression turning sour. "Come on, Amy's in a tough spot, and you're acting so heartless. Can't you show a little compassion?" My husband chided. "It's not about lacking compassion. I don't mind them staying temporarily, but fully supporting them is a different matter. They should at least chip in for groceries," I argued. "What? You're being downright miserly. Amy's not even working. It's obvious she can't contribute," he retorted, accusing me of being stingy. "Your opinion doesn't concern me. My sister needs help. As the head of this household, I've decided to assist her, and you should respect that," he declared firmly, before diverting his attention to games with them. To add insult to injury, the curry I'd saved for tomorrow disappeared, devoured by my husband and his guests. Throughout the evening, I endured my husband's scolding. "Make sure you prepare more nutritious meals for my niece," he demanded. It struck me, had my husband ever shown this level of concern for our daughter's nutrition? Apparently, he could muster such care only for his beloved niece. My husband wholeheartedly sided with his sister, disregarding my feelings entirely. To make matters worse, he branded me as a miser for worrying about our finances. "She can't chip in for groceries because she's not working. That's not my problem. Regardless of their struggles, we can't afford to support them indefinitely for free," he stated bluntly. The next day, and the day after that, my husband doted on his sister and niece, barely acknowledging me and our daughter. "Amy, I picked up the cake you wanted," he announced. "Oh, Thank you, Ethan, Amy replied, her gratitude directed solely at him. I spotted some toys from Yuri's favorite cartoon on sale. I couldn't resist getting them, my husband mentioned casually. Sure, go ahead, I replied, trying to hide my disappointment. The cake was exclusively for his sister and niece, and naturally, the toy was intended only for his niece. Both our daughter and his niece were around the same age, so it wasn't difficult to imagine that our daughter would also appreciate some cake and toys. But I had to endure a little longer. Once his sister reconciled with her husband, they would leave our home, and our family life would revert to its usual rhythm. Repeating this mantra to myself, I managed to suppress my frustration. Then one day, my daughter approached me with a heart-wrenching question. Mom, does Dad like Yuri more than me? What? Why do you think that? I asked, taken aback. He seems to only pay attention to Yuri. He doesn't even respond when I talk to him, she explained tearfully. I was speechless, engulfed in a wave of sadness. Pulling her close, I held her tightly, unable to find the right words to console her. Don't worry, Luna, he's your dad, I reassured her, though inside, I knew the situation couldn't continue. A few days later, I confronted my husband about his behavior. Luna's feeling neglected. It's great that you love Yuri, but you need to make time for Luna as well, I urged. Fine. It's just so much effort, he grumbled. Effort? Our daughter is Luna, not Yuri, I reminded him. Yeah, I understand. I'll make an effort to pay attention to Luna, he conceded. Despite my efforts to communicate my daughter's feelings, nothing changed. I watched as my daughter gazed at my husband, who was joyfully engaged with our niece, her eyes filled with sorrow. It seemed futile to expect my sister-in-law to step in and care for our daughter in my husband's absence. They were always focused on Yuri. I was the sole source of attention for our daughter, yet she still seemed lonely. A month went by, and our family was crumbling under the strain. Financially, we were barely scraping by. Moreover, no matter how much I tidied, our apartment remained in disarray because my sister-in-law and niece never lifted a finger to help. Meanwhile, my husband continued to lavish attention on his sister and niece, neglecting both our daughter and me. I couldn't endure this any longer. I've had enough. This has gone too far. Can we please have a serious discussion about our future? I confronted my husband, my frustration boiling over. What's gotten into you all of a sudden? I've been saying the same thing repeatedly, haven't I? Life is becoming increasingly difficult, and what's your plan regarding Amy and her predicament? You're not suggesting we live like this indefinitely, are you? He retorted. What choice do we have? She's in the midst of a marital dispute, I explained. Then shouldn't she consider divorce or try to resolve things with her husband? It's been a month already. Luna and I are reaching our breaking point. Please take our feelings into consideration, I pleaded. I knew broaching this subject would upset Ethan, but I had to advocate for Luna and the future of our family. Luna adores you, you know, but when she sees her dad showering affection only on his niece, it's bound to hurt her. I prioritized Luna's feelings over my own, I expressed to my husband. Ethan's a father as well. He should understand how much Luna is hurting and adjust his behavior, I added, hoping for some empathy. But his response left me speechless. Amy is family, right? She's your family too. How can you say such cold things? You're heartless, he accused me. Heartless? Me? I was taken aback by his accusation. It's not that I dislike Amy and Yuri. I just want our situation to change. But Ethan made it seem like I was the villain in all of this. I always knew you were cold-hearted, Ethan accused. Amy's struggling, and Yuri misses her dad. I have to give them attention. You're there for Luna, so why can't you handle it? Whoa, hold on, I protested. I'm covering all the household expenses. Why should Luna and I suffer? My salary contributes to our family budget, you know. But Amy is my sister. That makes her your family too. Yet you're always so distant, Ethan argued, laying the blame squarely on me. His cold gaze made it clear that his sister and niece took precedence over our daughter. Then he dropped a bombshell that left me stunned. Amy wants to stay here, so we'll be taking care of them from now on. We're responsible for everything: food, clothing, and shelter. In that moment, all my hopes shattered. I realized I was foolish to believe that talking would lead to understanding. Our old life was gone, irretrievably lost. I met Ethan's gaze squarely and uttered, "Fine, then let's get a divorce." My husband's expression morphed into one of disbelief. He seemed utterly perplexed by my declaration. After a tense silence, he stared at me incredulously. Divorce? What on earth are you suddenly talking about? You're joking, right? Do you honestly believe I'd joke about something like this? If you're going to dismiss mine and Luna's feelings, then I won't prioritize yours either. I'm going to make the best decision for Luna and ensure our happiness, I affirmed, resolute in my stance. He probably never anticipated me raising the topic of divorce. His disbelief was palpable as he scoffed, talking about divorce. You couldn't possibly handle raising Luna on your own. Sure, single parenting is challenging, but it's far better than enduring this. If you're serious, then go ahead and file for divorce. I'll even sign the papers. But remember, if you have a change of heart later and decide you don't want a divorce, it'll be too late, I asserted firmly. Do you really think I'd back down? I produced the papers I'd prepared earlier and handed them, along with a pen, to him. He froze upon seeing the divorce papers before him, making no move to fill them out. What's the matter? Aren't you going to fill out the papers? I pressed, urging him to take action. Oh no, he muttered, visibly shaken as I placed the pen in his hand. Come on, fill it out. You said you would, didn't you? No, I was just joking, he protested weakly. What a joke. You dared me to divorce you, claiming it'd be too late to change your mind later, and now you're too scared to follow through. Pathetic, I spat out in frustration. Shut up. I'll fill it out, okay? He snapped, scribbling his signature on the paper and thrusting it at me. There, I signed it. Happy now. Get out. You're annoying, he ordered, his irritation evident. I remained composed as I countered, No, you're the one who's leaving. What? Huh? What do you mean? Huh? He spluttered in disbelief. This apartment is under my name, remember? And since you started supporting your beloved sister, even with your contribution, we couldn't cover our living expenses, so I had to foot the rent alone. Yet you had the audacity to keep living here without any guilt. Are you stupid? Are you out of your mind? Suddenly, a voice interrupted our argument. Wait a minute, what's going on here? Amy, my sister-in-law, rushed over and grabbed Ethan by the collar. Then she exclaimed, You promised we could stay here indefinitely. So you were lying. Amy, it's not. What do you mean, it's not? I trusted you to keep us in your home forever. I can't believe you're throwing us out. I didn't expect things to escalate like this, Ethan stuttered. Ha! You can't even handle your own wife, she taunted. What did you say? Ethan bristled. I had reached my breaking point with their argument. I gathered my sister-in-law and her children's belongings and tossed them out onto the doorstep. Hey, wait, what are you doing? Amy approached me, clearly agitated. But now that I had decided to divorce Ethan, I felt no obligation to protect her. I'm just removing someone else's belongings. Actually, you're trespassing. Could you please leave as soon as possible? I replied calmly, causing Amy to shrink back. You don't have to throw out our stuff. And you, Ethan, she turned to my ex-husband. Could you please leave us as well? I have no need for either of you anymore, I stated firmly. What kind of thing is that to say to your husband? Ethan protested. You're not my husband anymore. You're my ex-husband, I stated firmly. I never realized you could be so heartless, Ethan muttered in disbelief. Well, that's your problem now. You've crossed the line. If you think your sister and her child are more important than our own, then why don't the three of you happily live together? I retorted. Where are we supposed to go if we leave here? Are you seriously kicking us out? Ethan protested. I don't care. Do whatever you want. Now, get out. I'll call the cops if you don't, I declared, my patience wearing thin. Once I confirmed that Ethan and his sister's family had reluctantly left, I shut the door behind them. It was unlikely I'd see them again. Glancing around the room, I noticed my daughter, Luna, staring at me with a puzzled expression. Mama, where's Daddy gone? She asked innocently. I'm sorry, Luna. Do you think it's okay if it's just Mama and you from now on? I inquired gently. Luna hesitated for a moment, her expression thoughtful, but then her smile returned. I'll be okay as long as Mama's here. I'm fine as long as I'm with you, she reassured me. She rushed into my arms and I held her tightly. Yes, even without my husband, we would be all right. Together, just the two of us, we could find happiness. Later on, I arranged for their belongings to be shipped to my husband's parents' house and explained the situation over the phone. It seemed my husband and his sister's family had indeed returned to their parents' house as anticipated. However, it appeared they had been disowned and ejected from the house by their irate parents. Consequently, my ex-husband rented a small apartment where he now resides with his sister and niece as a trio. It seemed like that was their desired outcome, but I couldn't care less. I later learned that my sister-in-law's marital discord stemmed from her extravagant spending habits. Now, she was being compelled to repay the money she had squandered from her husband. Almost every day, my ex-husband inundated me with cringe-worthy texts. "I made a mistake, please forgive me. I love you and Luna more than anything. I want us to reunite as a family." Needless to say, I ignored every one of them, promptly consigning them to the trash folder. Luna doesn't want to see her dad anymore, so we don't have any plans to meet him. I'm considering moving us out of this place soon, as it could become problematic if they were to show up unexpectedly. For my daughter, I want to shower her with love and provide her with everything she needs. Even without a father figure, my priority is to ensure she lives a happy